Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Thursday, February 13th. This is episode 171. That is Chuck Miketinac. I am Matt Roy. That's Luis. That's Bob. Can't see them, but...
got introduced. Thank you.
171. Figured we'd show people, tell them who you are at this point. It is Thursday, February 13th, as I have already said, so I'll say it again. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, News 4 Fox SA. Download if you are so inclined. Rate, review on the podcast version. Got a lot to talk about, Chuck, but it is a day before Valentine's Day. As someone who's been married for 35 years, how do you view the holiday? Do you guys still celebrate?
Well, it's definitely a Hallmark holiday, and I do participate. I think that's part of the reason why the marriage has lasted as long as it has. Some years better than others. I think last year around this time, because we got married in March, we kind of did a Valentine's/anniversary trip, and we went to Bavaria. So,
okay.
Well, we're not anywhere close to doing that this year.
I was going to say what?
In fact, I'm still in the planning stages for what I need to do tomorrow.
Planning stages at 3:41 on
the
Thursday.
day before. Yes.
Jordan and I are celebrating tonight since I work tomorrow over on the Fox side. So we're going to dinner tonight. Already did my HEB trip and got flowers for her. So she doesn't know that though. Hopefully she's not listening. So they can be sitting there.
Shouldn't this be a two-way street though? Shouldn't you be getting something out of this deal too in terms
No,
of
actually,
flowers or candy
I'm
or something?
very devious. So I told Jordan we weren't doing presents this year because I didn't want anything. But I always had the full intention of giving her something. So I didn't want her to give me anything. So
and
I
now
tricked
that
her.
Cat is
And
out of that
out of the bag.
bag.
Yeah, well, I told her today. I was like, I got you a present. She's like, well, you said no presents. And I was like, I said no presents for
Now she
me.
knows that she can't trust you for next year's Valentine's.
She should know that already. It's 2.5 years in. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about. Troy Aikman, Dak Prescott speaking out at the Dallas Cancer Fund Gala this week. Cowboys fans a little bit up in arms about what Dak said. That was delusional, to say the least. Basically said that they're very close to competing with the Eagles for Super Bowl title. We'll talk about that. Spurs end their first half of their season 23-29 after a loss last night at TD Garden in Boston. So what do we think of that? What do we think of the first half of the season? 52 games down. Is this about what we expected this team to look like? And Alex Bregman now going to be a Boston Red Sox player. I always hate that you can't say sock. It's a Boston Red Sox. He will be going to the Boston Red Sox, leaving the Astros, joining his former bench coach in Alex Cora. So we'll talk about all of that if there is time at the end of this. But I want to start with the Cowboys first, because why not? At the Dallas Cancer Fund Gala this week, Dak had this to say. I will just start with the soundbite because we can't talk crap about Dak without hearing it first. This is the state of the Cowboys and how close they are to competing with the Eagles.
I mean, I feel like we compete with the Eagles and beat them for the most part when we've played them. I don't want to say check the record when they're the guys holding the trophy right now, so credit to them. They've earned it and they deserved it by all means. But, yeah, very close, especially when you even watch the NFC game, the NFC Championship. And those two teams that we battle against each and every year a couple of times. And, as I said, feel confident about we've gotten the better part each and every time.
Okay, so that might be the most delusional thing I've ever heard Dak say. Besides Jerry says delusional things all the time. Dak, on the other hand, is a little bit usually more reserved. But saying you're very close to a Super Bowl champion when you went 7-10 and you haven't gotten to a NFC title game in the last 30 years is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, I've heard some dumb things in my life, so I won't say that this is anywhere close to that. Because
it's a very dumb.
Well, what did you expect him to say?
Congratulations to the Eagles. We're working to get back there every single day.
Okay, maybe that would have been more in line too. I don't know what he's supposed to say in that situation because I don't think that you can have your franchise leader show a lot of, weakness in public, I guess. But yes, to your point, I think Dak, in some ways, like if you look at his record against his divisional opponents, he has dominated his division when he stepped on the field. So maybe from his standpoint, that's what he's thinking about. However, the last time he played the Eagles, this team that just won the Super Bowl looks nothing like the last time he played the Eagles, right? I mean, that team just steamrolled through the playoffs. And yeah, there's a huge chasm between where the Eagles are right now and where the Dallas Cowboys are right now. There's no question about that in my mind, or to your mind, or to the fans' minds.
Well, to say you're very close to what? You're closer to the bottom of the standings than you are the top. There are 5 teams in the NFC that have worse odds than the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl next year. That means there's 10 teams with better or the same odds, including the Atlanta Falcons, who I think they're a chasm away. Who are you trying to fool?
I don't know. I mean, again, it might be just bravado, or, Dak's not going to back down. Maybe he's doubling down. I'm not really sure. But in his defense, a little bit, I mean, if you watch that entire interview, he looked like he was rushed in a lot of his statements. It's a hard place to give thoughtful
They do that
football questions when you're talking about being at a children's cancer gala. I mean, I'm going to give him some grace on this one.
They give statements there every year, though. Like, he knew this interview was coming. He knew that
Yes.
he was going to be
interviewed.
interviewed.
And he made himself available.
And you knew he was going to be. He knew he was going to be asked that question. You go in, and he's usually very, very poignant and honest. I feel like, and he's very media trained, media friendly when it comes to his interviews. He doesn't usually say the most outlandish thing in the world. It's always, I am where my feet are, and blah 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 blah. Especially when it came to his contract, he never said anything super crazy. Saying you're very close is, one, taking away from the Eagles. Two, there's at least 2 teams in your division better than you, because the Commanders aren't going anywhere either. You're the 3rd best team in your division. You're at least the 10th best team in the NFC, and you're in the bottom third of teams in the entire league. I don't know. I just don't understand how in the offseason Cowboys brass, Cowboys players can try and sell themselves every single year, saying, this is going to be it, this is going to be it, this is going to be it. We're very close. We're right there. No, you're not. Stop.
Yeah, they've got to do something in free agency, I think. They've got to do some sort of a splash, get the dogs off at this point, right? I mean, and there's nothing they can really do while we sit here during the offseason that's going to alleviate the pressure or the heat that they brought on themselves for their record last year. And then given all the, the new coaching and everything else, the heat is going to be on until we start this new calendar year. So, this is why we're nitpicking what Dak said at a cancer gala.
Yeah, I mean, and Troy talked at the gala as well. Troy Aikman, obviously Cowboys legends, always talking. He's actually been a little bit more poignant, a little bit more directed towards the Cowboys organization recently too. So let's get to that soundbite where he talks about the fans of the Dallas Cowboys and how they should feel about this team right now.
I think I speak for the Cowboys faithful in saying that it's been a long time, and this is the Dallas Cowboys, and it's an organization that's had great history, and this team has won a lot of games over the years with a lot of different players, but for whatever reasons they just haven't been able to get it done in the postseason. But I don't think anybody's happy about that.
Strangest thing I've heard today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's saying nobody's happy about the Cowboys and where they are right now, and that's just duh. But how do the Cowboys fans, or how do the Cowboys integrate and kind of buy some more goodwill with the Cowboys fans right now? Because I don't know how they do it.
I think they've got to do
offseason.
something in free agency. They've got to make a splash in the draft. They got to do something to shake things up and get at least the public narrative going in their direction. Will it affect what's going on the field? I mean, obviously that's a separate entity, but if you want to call off the dog, so to speak, see if there's somebody that fits money-wise, that's a bit of a name, just throwing out Devontae Adams. Is there a way you could figure out a way to make a trade with whatever team he's on right now, the Jets?
The Jets have a whole other host
something
issues.
that you could go, wow, here we need a 2 receiver. I don't know. That to me would be a step in the right direction, because I don't remember, well, it's been a while, I should say, but, not since the advent of social media and Twitter or X, that there's been this much negativity, this sustained, like, there just feels like there's no hope. And the only people that are saying, yes, believe in us and we think we're going forward and we're great, is everybody inside the organization. Nobody is coming to their rescue on this.
Because they're not great and nobody does believe in them. Like, you've used all of the goodwill. You could have started building excitement by signing a coach not named Brian Schottenheimer. Sure enough, you signed. I think there might have been more excitement if you brought back Mike McCarthy. But whether that was McCarthy's decision, whether that was Jerry Jones' decision, whether it was a financial decision, a football decision, whatever the case may be, they're going to say what they will. Whether the truth of it, we might not ever know. You could have started building up that goodwill there. Instead, you hire Brian Schottenheimer, who is the easy choice, the continuous choice that will provide continuity to your offense, to Dak Prescott, might shake up a few things, but is the safe choice, much like Jason Garrett was back in the day. Back in the day, meaning, 15 years ago. There's no indication that they're going to do anything to excite people this offseason.
I don't know. I mean, the thought of maybe trading Micah Parsons, I mean, if you could get a bag of picks for him, what would that look like? In a draft that's got, by all accounts, is super deep at defensive line, which is what they need.
Especially
obviously.
Defensive tackle.
Yes. So, but again, could you figure out a way to get a big name player, anything to get this going even before the draft? But I think they've got to figure out a way too. They've got to accrue more picks. They got to capitalize on having high-rounded picks based on their poor record from last year.
Right now, I think that the Cowboys as an organization and their aura, for lack of a better term, is becoming old, and not age old, becoming stale. I think that their allure, their draw, has fallen flat and is starting to fall on deaf ears, that they're not drawing as much as they should be or as much as they were. If you were to poll and ask who is America's team at this point, I don't know if it would still be the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know how you measure that kind of stuff, but I think, it's not only them, it's across the league. I mean, the numbers aren't where they were ratings-wise 5 years ago. There's a lot less interest, although there's still a significant interest. Fox is saying that this was the most watched Super Bowl ever if you count all the clicks that they got on TV, and, they were giving the product away on some of their the platforms across the internet. So, I don't know. It's a hard thing to measure. I know it's also hard, too, to kind of pivot and, I hate to say rebuild, but that's kind of what this looks like, right? In some ways, a soft rebuild that, they're separating themselves from a coach that had been there, won a significant amount of regular season games, but obviously could never take him to the promised land. This is going to look a little different. I think there's going to be a more concerted effort to run the football. And even though Mike McCarthy said that's what they wanted to do last year, obviously they didn't do that well enough, especially early on. And even when they were sort of healthy, they weren't playing great.
No.
So, I don't know. I find it fascinating. Here we are still talking about these guys, right? And they haven't played a game in 2 months.
Are you ever surprised by the fact that legends like Troy and Emmett and Michael Irvin, they come out and criticize the Cowboys so strongly sometimes? I heard Emmett on during Super Bowl week with the guys over at SA Sports Star, Jason and Joe on the Blitz, and he's still hypercritical of the Cowboys, but in another breath, period, end of sentence, he'll say Jerry Jones is one of the best people he knows. Jerry Jones is one of the best owners in football, but the way that they go about their organization is XYZ. Are you ever interested? Do you ever think that that's interesting that they will criticize the organization so strongly but still back them?
I mean, a little bit, but I think also, too, those guys have benefited from the star on their helmet. And even if they're talking negatively about the Cowboys, they're talking about them. And so, therefore, they stay in the public consciousness, whether it be good or bad. Granted, I'm assuming most of us would want it to always be good, and we're talking about the amount of winning and the star players and all that. And when it goes bad, well, then they rightly are going to get that same kind of spotlight. It's just that energy is going to be a little bit different. So, yes, I am a little surprised that Troy is critical, but I think these guys are thoughtful enough that it's okay for them to have an opinion on what's going on. I mean, the results are what they are. If you win 7 ball games and the expectation was that you were going to not only make it to the playoffs, but make it beyond, then it's fair for everybody to have an opinion on how we got here.
I just can't believe that Dak actually said that they're really close. I really can't. I saw that the other day, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Yes, Bob.
One comment from Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
He gives us not us. He gives the Cowboys a thumb down, and he says, as long as Jerry is there, they won't win.
Yeah, I agree. But Steven will take over after that, so good luck.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're going to end up like the Cleveland Browns.
Again, I mean, they've had a Super Bowl drought,
Sorry,
but
Bob.
they've won some ball games. They haven't won the biggest ball game in a long time, but
Or the second biggest ball game.
that too. I mean, again, the criticism, they know it's coming, but this is what you get when you've put yourself out there like they have, right? This is what they've signed up for. This is why they're the most valuable franchise on planet Earth.
He being Jerry has
Or a reason, I should say.
put his team in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons for the last 30 years. He's devalued the value of a coach for the last 30 years, saying there's 500 people that could have come in and coached that team in the 90s and won a Super Bowl with it. Well, this offseason he interviewed 4 and came up with Brian Schottenheimer. So he's not doing anything to help himself in the public eye at this point.
Well, let's see what Schottenheimer does. I mean, again, you got to start somewhere. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about Andy Reid never being able to win the big one, and now the guy wins all of them just about.
Okay. Andy Reid?
Dude,
Brian Schottenheimer.
I'm old enough to know what the thought process or what the public sentiment was on Andy Reid. He was the modern-day Marty Schottenheimer. Great coach, but can't win the big one. And now, look what's happened just in the last 6 years.
He left the Eagles as the most winning coach in that organization.
So, and Mike McCarthy, where's he at when he leaves the Cowboys? That's what I'm saying. I'm old enough to have seen how these narrative streams can change. Just let's give the guy a chance.
I don't want to.
Nope.
Let's get to the Spurs real quick. So the Spurs lose last night, the last game before the All-Star break. They finish the first half of their season. It's 52 games, but they finished the first half 23-29. Encouragingly, last year at this time, they were 11-44. So 12 games improved from where they were at the All-Star break last year. But their loss last night was, like a lot of them, disappointing. Got out to a big deficit, down 19 at halftime, cut it to 8 early in the fourth quarter, I want to say, like 93-85, something like that. And then they get outscored the rest of the way. What was your take from last night's game before we hear from Coach Mitch Johnson?
Yeah, they got big brothered last night. I mean, yes, they got buried after the first quarter, and then I think the narrative was, well, we played them well after that. It's like, I don't know that Boston was that engaged. To me, it
was getaway day. It was the last day before All-Star
Yeah, I
break.
mean, at that point, Boston knew that they could maintain speed and distance and really not have to give max effort to win that game. But it just also, another example of where the Spurs are as a franchise right now, right? They're a growing team. They're a young team. They're trying to get to a place where Boston is, and there's a significant difference right now.
Fair enough. This is Mitch Johnson, the acting head coach of the Spurs, after the game.
I think the team has made tremendous strides in their consistency and their maturity and trying to play and execute in what we ask, and I think that's going to be the continued goal. And I think anytime you improve, expectations come with that. I think anytime you add a good player, expectations come with that. And I think that we will be stubborn and not skipping steps and trusting that we're going to go about this the right way while also being maniacally about trying to win and compete.
If I hear one more person in the Spurs organization say we're not skipping steps, I'm going to blow my brains out. It makes me absolutely...
No, please don't. It's not that important.
It makes me absolutely want to vomit hearing them say that. You're not skipping steps by acquiring De'Aaron Fox, but you're taking the next step. And so far, the team with De'Aaron Fox has not taken the next step. He is correct, though, by having Victor on your team, by having CP3 and Harrison Barnes and De'Aaron Fox on your team, expectations come along with that. So I don't think that Mitch and this team are overlooking those expectations. I just think that they're not living up to all of our expectations, which makes me question, are our expectations of this team too high?
I don't know. I mean, no, I think again, you pointed out, we're not watching last year's team, thank God, right? I mean, this is a lot easier to watch. They're much more competitive, more sustained competitiveness during the course of games. I feel bad for them in some ways because I think they were playing pretty well before the trade deadline. Then you add an alpha like De'Aaron Fox is, and we saw how well he played in that first half of the first game and how assertive he's going to be, that he's going to command a lot of attention. He looks different than just about everybody else on the floor. And I feel bad that they make this trade in the midst of the longest road trip of the year, right?
Yeah.
So there's not time to, go to the gym and work out for a couple hours and work out some things. I mean, end of game scenarios look pretty rudimentary. Put everybody in the corner and then we're going to play the two-man game at the top.
They haven't even practiced yet.
Correct. So, I mean, how do you expect there to be any continuity with the talent level that there is in the NBA? And then, like, using Boston as an example, how much continuity and how well and how long that team has played together.
Reigning champs, yeah.
Yeah. So it's tough to be able to win close games or any game for that matter, I would think, on the surface by adding a great piece like this, but then everybody else trying to find their way and what does this look like? And as Mitch pointed out last night, made a couple of great points. If you put this guy here, then it messes up the ecosystem over here. There's a lot of moving parts right now, and continuity is something that will probably come in time and maybe with a little practice, but right now it's obviously not where it ought to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it can be overstated the amount or the value of practice in the NBA and in all sports. I mean, they need time to gel and get together. I think my expectation was that, you got De'Aaron Fox, now you're going to win all these games because Charlotte sucks and because who else did they play? They beat the Wizards by 10. What was the other team that they lost to that is
I don't know. I'm
right
sorry.
now?
I'm in the ever-present now.
There was another team that they lost to that is escaping me.
Magic, yes.
Magic, thank you. They lost to the Magic by a point, and it's like, I thought that they were going to plug De'Aaron Fox in. They were going to be like, okay, Charlotte sucks. We're going to beat Charlotte. Orlando's injured. We're going to beat Orlando. We're going to beat Washington. Okay, 4 games in a row. Maybe we lose to Boston on getaway day. I think my expectation might have been too high, thinking that you can plug and play someone like that in, and it wouldn't take some adjustment time. Now that you have the All-Star break, though, I don't know how much time they're going to get. Wemby and Steph are gone. Wemby and Steph are going to have 4 days out there in San Francisco. They don't play again until next week, so maybe they get a couple of days of practice. But you got to give Wemby and Steph a day off or two, right? Like, how much practice are they going to get in between now and their next game? I don't know. How much continuity can be built? Probably not a lot, and you're still on the road until the beginning of March.
Yeah, and then they have a late game when they come back in Austin at 8:30, and then they play the next night against Detroit in Austin again, too. So to your point, it's tough, right?
Like,
so how are you supposed to make a leap going forward for the rest of the year? But you're not going to turn down a De'Aaron Fox in a trade for
Absolutely not. I mean,
right?
I don't think anything barring like a Josh Primo type situation could make us regret the De'Aaron Fox trade, especially this year. Like, even if they lose the rest of their games this season, the season I think was a success because of the growth that you've seen. And the De'Aaron Fox trade will not be judged based on this season. It'll be judged based on the subsequent seasons to come.
Agree. I thought Mitch said something interesting last night, and I'm always fascinated when, like, there's, to me, saying the quiet part out loud, and nobody seems to be picking up on it. But when he says last
That's why
night,
you're here.
well, thank you. But I mean, when he says last night that we need to find guys that are committed to playing with one another, that tells me a lot. And again, we're going to give him grace, right, because of the trade and no practice time and all that. But I think there's a broader issue here that he's pointed out more than once, is they're looking for guys, and I think it's obvious without naming names that, sometimes the ball stops, right? It doesn't look like everybody's quite on the same page, or they'll get into stretches where one guy will drive his head down and go to the basket and miss, and then the next guy feels like, well, he's got to try it then. And there's just certain times where I thought what he said last night, again, it just rang home. He wouldn't be saying that if he didn't mean it. And I think it's a little interesting, too. There doesn't seem to be a lot of people out there giving Mitch Johnson any grace, given everything that he's had to, at least on, the internet, I should say.
About 4 months in now to the Mitch Johnson tenure, the interim tenure as head coach of the Spurs while Coach Popovich still recovers from his stroke. I think he's through the grace period. I think that there's times this season when Mitch has looked overwhelmed and didn't really know exactly what to do in certain situations, how to coach people in certain situations. And that's to be expected from a young guy who has never been a head coach before in the league. And I think that's why when Mitch was hired or Mitch was given this role, we were all kind of surprised that it wasn't Bruce Brown or it wasn't one of the other guys on the bench that has more experience. So in terms of how much grace we're giving Mitch, I think that we're through that now. Like if he's going to be the head coach the rest of the season, which there's no indication that he's not going to be, he's there to be criticized too, and he deserves some criticism for what he's done with this team so far.
Yeah, I like his demeanor. I like his body language. I like the way he's thoughtful and expresses himself in post-game press conferences, pre-game press conferences.
Yeah.
He's a good sharer of information. He's trying to let everybody know this is kind of where we're at and what the expectation is. So, again, if I look at all the things that are going, if you're thinking we're not winning close games and all that, I just don't know that that's going to be one of the first places that I start as a head coach.
And I'm not saying that to demean the job that Mitch has done. I think overall he's done a good job. But I'm just saying he's not above being criticized.
That's fair.
Anything, Bob?
Yeah.
As are we all.
Scott's got a somewhat controversial take here. He says, how can they have high expectations without a solid big man? They get so out-rebounded in every game.
Good point, Scott.
Fox just needs to have his hand surgery now and let Castle play 30-plus minutes a game.
Scott, you've been listening to this podcast way too much, buddy, because we've been saying that for 2 months.
No, and it's an apt point, right? I mean, they got pulverized again last night on the boards. I mean, when you're getting out-rebounded by 20-something every night, it's tough to win ball games. You better make half your shots if that's going to be the case.
Can you check me on this as an observation? It seems like, especially in the Boston game last night, but for the last 4 or 5 games, it seems like everybody on the court, all the Spurs on the court, are surprised when the shot goes up. It's like they don't really know what's going on with the offense or whatever. So they're all out of position to box out. Nobody's in the right box out position.
56-38 last night.
They're late. They're late to get to their box out, and then they get beat with the ball.
I mean, you're right. I mean,
am I right in seeing that? Is that what I'm seeing?
I don't know. I mean, if that's what you're seeing, that's what you're seeing. Trust your own eyes, right? Well, I mean, what I see is there's not a commitment to going to the glass, and you don't have to have guys that are Victor Wembanyama size to go get rebounds. It helps, but if you do what you're supposed to do as a rebounder, you put your fanny on somebody and you make sure that nobody can get close to the basket so that when the ball bounds off the rim that your guys are the ones that get it. But it's tough because, if you want to get out and run or get an easy shot, then having everybody go down and get a rebound, takes away from that.
Well, there's a couple
really
things.
It's really tough to get in the proper box out position, though, if you don't know the shots coming out.
Also when you're playing when you're playing 5-out offense and your biggest guy, Victor Wembanyama, is taking 10 threes a game, you're probably not going to get the most boards, especially when you're playing a lineup that is Harrison Barnes as your second tallest person. Jeremy Sohan sometimes is out there being the 5. It's hard to rebound when you don't have any size, especially with all the size of the people in the NBA. You're not going to win a lot of games when you're 9 of 39 from 3 either. You're not going to win a lot of games when you get out rebounded 56-38. It's just not going to happen. The 2 other things that we said that this team needed at the deadline was size and shooting. Neither of the things that they got. They got the superstar. Awesome. In the offseason, they have to address the size. They have to address their shooting. That's just has to happen.
Trust the process.
Don't skip steps.
That's right.
Let's get to Alex Bregman real quick before we get out of here. So Alex Bregman has been his long and tenuous journey in free agency finally coming to an end last night, signing a 3-year, $120 million deal with the Boston Red Sox. All signs had kind of been pointing to Houston that he would be back. Houston never really changed their offer. It was always about 5 years, $150-ish million. He ends up signing a shorter deal for $120 million, so his ABV goes way up. He has deferred money in there. He has two potential opt-outs. So what did you make of the deal? I know you're the baseball savant here. So
sad. I mean, it feels like an end of an era in a lot of ways. I mean, that guy has been to the playoffs every single year he's been in the league. 2017, a lot of magic there, watching the first.
A lot of magic there.
Well, and, weirdly, in a strange way, because, Alex Bregman's personality was so fun, so gregarious. I mean, I could go on for days about, just the wonderful sound bites that he would give you. And, that whole incident beat a lot of his personality, at least in terms of what he shares with the public, out of him. And, so that kind of makes me sad a little bit, but great guy, great leader in the locker room. I've seen it with my own two eyes early on in training camp. You'll see a gaggle of Spanish-speaking players in the corner, and he'll go pull up a chair, and he'll just start riffing with younger guys. And there's a winning culture here where a lot of these faces have changed, albeit this will be the first time with Bregman. So it'll be interesting to see if they can keep that winning going. And he meant so much more to the Astros than just picking him at third and, being a clutch guy, especially in the postseason. He's going to be missed in a lot of different areas, and I'm sad to see him go because he just seems like a really nice guy. Married a local girl from around here, and when they did the stand up to cancer, he honored a local person that had lost their lives to cancer, and he's just a good guy. And I mean, it kind of sucks for Astros fans. I can see why they're a little bent right now because there are obviously many reasons why he left. If the Astros were offering what they offered, and then he ultimately ended up signing for less money. So I get it where the hate's going to come from.
Where does this leave the Astros now? Because, they signed Isaac Paredes to cover the third base line.
He's good.
They expected Bregman to leave.
Right.
It ultimately didn't come down to, or was going to come down to, is Bregman going to re-sign with the Astros after his free agent market wasn't exactly what Scott Boras expected it to be. So they were almost his fallback plan at a certain point, but they expected him to leave this offseason. So I would argue that the Astros are still in a decent shape without him. However, the leadership department is lacking.
Yeah, I mean, they could use another outfielder. It's just going to be fascinating, right? Because I think a lot of teams going in, you just don't know. And maybe they end up getting with Paredes, it turns out to be, exactly what he is and continues to thrive and even hits better in this ballpark, whatever the case may be. Statistically, maybe the numbers are equal or better with the moves that they've made. They've got a first baseman now for the first time in the last couple of years, and Christian Walker. So that was a hole that they shored up. So again, it's the intangibles. It's him, Altuve, and McCullers are the only three guys that were in that room that had been on both World Series teams, and a lot of winning, obviously, in between. Mm-hmm. So what's it going to look like when one of those guys, and you could pretty much say what I just said about Bregman, about all three of those guys, it obviously means something, or they wouldn't have had this kind of a dynastic run. So, and he's one of those guys that's been there for all of it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only team that he could have gone to that made sense was the Red Sox. I mean, he joins Alex Cora, who's his former bench coach on the 2017-2016 team. He joins a team where the ballpark just is perfect for Alex Bregman. They get to move him to second base, where Alex Cora has said he's going to be a Golden Glove second baseman, which he obviously has the ability to do since they already have Rafi Devers. He's probably going to move again when they bring up their the fourth-ranked prospect in baseball. But his swing is going to look so beautiful going over the green monster. Excuse me.
He's going to have a lot of loud singles too. Line drives that are hit so hard that he can only get a single out of them off the green monster. So good for Boston, good for him. I hope he got what he was looking for, and hopefully the Astros will be able to move forward, and hope the Rangers give him hell too.
As a Red Sox fan, I'm here for it. Bob, anything on the way out?
We are good to go.
All right. That's all we got for today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We'll be back on Monday. We'll see you then.